Lost Art with Andrew Cox, retired Master Gunnery Sergeant. thelostart.podbean.com. Get some merchandise and help support the podcast in getting our veteran voices out for all to hear. Now on all major podcast platforms. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Be a guest, tell your veteran story, discuss your veteran business or organization. Email The Lost Art with Andrew Cox at gmail.com. Andrew Cox, a Till Valhalla Project Ambassador. See the project story at tillvalhallaproject.com. Thanks for tuning in. Please enjoy the podcast that's giving a voice to our veterans. The Lost Art with Andrew Cox.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Lost Art Podcast, that podcast giving a voice to our veterans. I'm your host, Andrew Cox, and today we're having a My Veteran Story. But before we get into the episode, are you enjoying the podcast? And make sure you go to our website. That's thelostart.podbean.com. Go check it out, see what we got going on. There is a merchandise tab. You can go in there, click on that merchandise tab. We do have some hats, some shirts, some mugs. We got some cool stuff. You can help us in supporting us and getting our veteran voices out for all to hear. Also, a big shout out to the Till Valhalla Project, allowing me to be an ambassador for that great organization. If you don't know anything about them, go to their website. That's tillvalhallaproject.com. They're doing some incredible things, and if there's any way you can support them and help them out, please do so. All right, with that, I got Ulrik, and I don't know how to say your last name. I forgot to ask.
Merstrand.
Ulrik Merstrand here. Marine veteran, so I'm excited that you're here. You're going to tell your story. So, welcome, man. Welcome.
Hey, thanks a lot, Andrew. I appreciate it very much. Thanks for what you do. I know we talked a little bit before we got started about it, but yeah, I think it's inspiring that you're out here doing it. I'm looking down the barrel. I'm not fully fledged off active duty yet, but I'm staring down the barrel of kind of the abyss of uncertainty, and seeing you out here doing your thing is inspiring. So I just thank you for that.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. Well, I guess let's get started. Let's go to the beginning. Like, where did you grow up? Kind of what was that like, and then what drew you into the military?
Okay, all right. That's so. My name was picked up from Denmark, and that's where I was born and raised. I was born in '84 in Viborg on the little small peninsula of Jutland there.
Oh man, we have some wind today. We are outside. There's a hurricane that went through Florida, so we are enjoying some of the wonderful wind.
Yeah,
so
God bless the people in Florida.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I grew up in Denmark and never experienced hurricane winds, not a day in my life.
Yeah.
But yeah, I grew up there. I jokingly say Bernie Sanders' wet dream, but he never moved there. But it was kind of pointed to as like a shining example of what social democracy might look like.
Right.
So yeah, born and raised there, and then without lingering there for too long, around my 20th birthday, my family moved to America. My dad got a job with the FAA working in Houston, Texas.
Nice.
And the year after, he suggested that I come over and attend college in the States. And I looked at it as a door of opportunity, kind of an opportunity for adventure. We were talking about that earlier,
right?
And the way that I viewed it was that this door has opened for me. It hasn't opened for my peer group, and I've always been very inspired by and love to see other guys doing their thing, whatever that thing is. People going in like wholesale and committing themselves to something, and for lack of better, kind of vicariously living through that,
right?
Like seeing that and getting a good story out of it. I mean, kind of case in point, your podcast, right?
Yeah.
So I felt somewhat of a debt of responsibility to act on this, open door of opportunity. So without any further deliberation, I looked at my friends who I love dearly and I still keep in touch with to this day, back in Denmark. I bought myself a one-way ticket. This was in August of 2005. I bought a one-way ticket in August to go over and attend college, because I could take some scholarship money with me from Denmark to study abroad.
Oh, wow.
And I arrived at the George Bush International in Houston, Texas, not realizing that without a visa or anything like that, it's not a good look to come in on a one-way ticket.
Yeah.
So I got, I didn't realize much of anything arriving at the international airport, because flying British Airways internationally, there's free booze. And one thing that, could be said about Denmark too is that they're fond of beer. And so I was too. I was very much part of my culture there. And myself and two gentlemen from Mexico that were flying with me, one very much a working Joe kind of get up, and one very, what I found out later was called machismo, very nails done up, like the whole, but a very carefully groomed, masculine man.
Gotcha.
We drank all the beer, every single beer that was on British Airways flying in. And I know this because we asked for more beer and they said, we don't have any more. I thought they cut us off. And so I asked for wine. They gave us wine. They didn't cut us off. We just actually drank all the beer that was on the plane. So, fast forward to, a unique fit for the Marine Corps, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, I arrived there and I didn't understand much of anything. This lady was giving me the dead stare as I was processing in, just on my passport and not a return ticket. And she asked me about my return date. I was like, I don't have one. I need one. Put me in holding for a little while. This is in 2005, so I was the only white guy in the holding at the airport, along with I don't know what looked to me like several hundreds of other Middle Eastern people that were there in the holding facility at the international airport. But I got out of that.
How long were you in holding?
For the better part of a day.
Really?
Yeah, it was a long time of being processed, right? Because I wasn't necessarily held but I was being processed through the system, right? But it was 7 or 8 hours worth of just sitting there sobering up, realizing I had some wine stains on my shirt and stuff like that. I probably didn't represent myself too well coming in. So I would say that in the defense of the skepticism of my entry point into the United States, I would say that it was somewhat founded because like I said, I didn't represent myself all too well. But that's how I came in on a one-way ticket, drunken off the plane, and without a particular plan of what to do. I wasn't enrolled in college. I knew that my dad had mentioned that there was a community college that I could attend. And so within, the first week of being in the States, I go to visit that community college. And so this, let's see, I have to make sure not to be too incriminating of myself, but.
And this was in Houston?
This is in Houston.
Okay.
Yeah. This is at the San Jacinto Community College in Deer Park, Pasadena, Houston, at the central campus there. Space City, Texas, right? Houston. And I go into the admissions office and they need to see papers that that I have a GED equivalency, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I didn't have anything to bring with me, so I get some makeshift paperwork. It's all in Danish, and I bring that to them and I say, look, I can get a certified translator service, but it's going to take a little while. In the meantime, can I enroll in classes? They say yes, but you'll have to take a placement exam. So I go through, I take a placement exam. Of course, there's books for this stuff. So before I go in to take the exam, I take all, the heavy study guides and whatnot, and I just don't sleep for a couple of days. And I go page, soup to nuts on these books. And I place well enough that they are suitably convinced at the time to allow me to enroll. I place above, freshman entry level math and whatever else. And I opt to just take core curriculum. I don't opt to excel, but I forget exactly how it worked out, but I was able to take 24 credit hours in my first semester with a waiver. I asked for permission to, and I just paid my way through it. And it was all on probation in the first place too, because I didn't have my GED certified yet.
Right.
So I just paid because at the end of the day, and something that I still have great respect and admiration for is that money talks,
Yeah.
and that's just the truth of it. Is like, you got to put your money where your mouth is. Yeah. If you want something done, you have to buy it. You have to buy into it. You have to invest. You have to show good faith and goodwill. And so I just, we paid for the tuition fees and we got that taken care of. And then I just kind of let that GED thing fall by the wayside. Because I couldn't get a hold of anything suitable. The translation came back and, it wasn't anything the registrar's office could use, but the registrar had gotten this thing across the goalpost in that they had gotten their tuition paid. And then I got a 4.0 GPA in my first 24 hours of credits in my first semester there,
Right.
which was exceeding the standard, both GPA wise, but also I think a full semester's worth of credit hours was 16 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
So I had to get waivers for that. And I got invited into the dean's office. I got an honorable mention by the dean, Mr. Braswell there. And so it just all worked by way of putting forth a lot of effort, working diligently towards something, and then paying, like putting my money where my mouth was.
Right.
And that was my like that summary, or to sum that up, I guess my initial experience with coming to America was so impactful and so influential. It was that I could do, if I just worked really hard, I could do anything, really.
Right. Yeah.
And if I invested into it, I could do good stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I did. I took they had just finished building a college of music. They'd hired on staff from Eastman University, or Eastman College of Music. And so a bunch of guys had come down from Eastman, kind of, that friend buddy hire system, nepotistic sort of thing. So they'd all come down, and they were the faculty and staff, with one exception being from Florida State University. Tito, I don't remember his last name, but Tito was awesome. He directed the big band.
Oh, okay.
And I just enrolled in everything because I thought of it like this: I'm in America, and kind of, again, like what we were talking about before, something that is, as a foreigner looking on America, one, like the big exports from America is Coca-Cola, Hollywood, and music. Like the king of rock and roll, king of pop, anything that you can think of that, if you go to a karaoke bar, 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, and it doesn't matter where you're at in the world, you're singing something in English. You're singing something that is either came out of America, or a notable variation is predominantly out of the UK, right? Rolling Stones, the Beatles, and stuff like that are trying to go for that American sound, or like paying homage to the American sound, inspired by the American sound, however you want to look at it, right? But definitely very much informed by American music culture. And so anyways, so they just finished building that, and I was looking at electives, and I saw some guys doing like firefighter drills and stuff like that, and that definitely piqued my interest. I was doing manual labor back in Denmark. I was working in factories and stuff like that, which I really enjoyed.
And how old were you when you came over?
I was 21. I just turned 21 that year, 2005, when I came over. So I could drink again. But that's another tangent, I guess. But yeah, factory work in Denmark wasn't bad to me. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed doing work and being done, working with your hands, having a simple life, just being done, and leaving it all at work. And as soon as like you punch out, you're done. And I'm not thinking about it anymore. Really enjoyed that. Had a good time with that. Could have stayed. But like I said, that door of opportunity opened up, and I felt a calling to walk through it. Like that was something that, wasn't just happenstance, wasn't just coincidental. But I say that to say that I looked at the firefighter drills and whatnot, and I was like, man, I could do that. I could go for that. But then I kind of thought, well, that's not uniquely American. That's not uniquely, whereas like the music thing, and all these guys from Eastman were jazz guys. Not exclusively, but definitely had like a heavy, and the department chair for that was an upright bass player.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And definitely a jazz guy. So I took electives, and I took private lessons with the head of the department, not on upright bass because I didn't have one, and you have to buy one. And while I definitely believe put your money where your mouth is, upright bass ain't cheap.
That's no lie,
dude. But what they did have is they had this dusty old. It was a Gibson ES 335 red. Looked super cool. Had like the F hole cutouts on it. Looked real jazzy, but also looked kind of rock and roll. Like just like was very intriguing. Very, very intriguing piece of equipment. And they had that sitting. I don't know where from, but they had that sitting in the storage for that music college. And I asked, like, can I play on that? Like, is that all right? And they let me. And so
very nice.
Yeah, dude. So I picked that up. I started playing on that, and I took lessons on like duo performance with that department head. I did take some jazz guitar lessons. I took drum set lessons.
Oh, wow.
I took piano lessons, and I took mandatory sight reading. So
Right.
kind of tangential vocal lessons, not really focused on voicing or vocals, but more focused on like, do you understand notes and the relations, and mainly interval training, honestly. Like, as a fellow musician, you understand what we're talking about, but like understanding notes and their relationship to other notes, right?
Right.
And that really stimulated my brain. And also I had just left everybody that I knew behind me in Denmark. And granted, my family was here in the States. They're in Houston. I didn't mention this before, but my dad had invited me over. He had a closet space adjacent to his office, which I stayed in.
Really?
That's where I lived for the first year that I was in the States. I
Holy cow.
brought a yoga mat with me, which I had done a lot of couch surfing in Denmark too. I didn't have a place to stay. I'd done some time as just a couch surfing bum / homeless person, and just doing like temp agency work and stuff like that. So I had this trusty yoga mat, or actually he might have had it. Either way, I lived on a yoga mat inside of a closet for like the first year. So that's to say that I had ample time to like just deep dive into and focus on what it was that I was doing. And that really paid dividends. I got an opportunity then. I didn't know about the music program coming to the States, right? I started playing with them there, and they started mentioning to me University of North Texas as like a logical step in that direction.
Right.
And I didn't know about it. I'd heard about Berkeley, and I'd heard about Los Angeles. I didn't know what was out in Los Angeles. I just knew about Los Angeles. That's where the music comes from, right? Anybody that knows anything knows that. And so my mind wasn't like, well, yeah, I could stay in Texas and do music. It was more like, this is a really neat exploration. Also, I like core curriculum. I was really enjoying my philosophy class, like Introduction to Logic and Philosophy. Really enjoyed that. Professor Pena was my professor on that, and I really enjoyed his approach. But so like that's to say that there's a lot of stimulating factors at that point in time in my life, and a lot of isolating factors in that I didn't have all of my old ways with me, right? That, had me rolling off drunk off of the plane coming into the States as like first and lasting impression, right? So I was able to leave a lot of that behind, and in the absence of that, like really run with it, and eventually, kind of same, less methodical approach. I tossed what guitar and amplifier I had into the back of a '93 GMC Sonoma that I had picked up from my dad's dad, who was living out in New Mexico. So I had this, small single cab pickup truck, right? And I drove that up to North Texas, and I hadn't been accepted into the music program. I hadn't been accepted in. I had paid tuition, and I had locked on a preliminary dorm setting and whatnot. And I promise I'll get to like what prompted me into enlisting into the service, because this all ties into it.
No,
This all like launches into it. But yeah, so I drive up, and it's not well put together or anything, but I know who the department chair is for the guitar programs, Fred Hamilton. Fred Hamilton, he served in the Air Force as a guitarist there for a time. So I just knew that from like his background, and then he's been the department chair, and I think he still is like the department head for guitar jazz studies at UNT, still University of North Texas. And yeah, so I go up and I just when everybody else is signed up for auditions, I'm signed up too, but I'm not like officially signed up. It's just like a paper sign up, and I go and I play for the guy, and I tell him frankly, like, hey, look, I paid tuition, I want to be in the program. I'm not officially in, like, can't you, like, can I be on as like probationary? Like, can we do this? And I do the same thing, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I do the same method of like enrolling in way too many classes up front. I take a ton of classes, a lot of core stuff like Jazz 101 fundamentals and stuff like that. Luckily, a lot of it you could kind of test out early online. So I do that. I take care of that. and like the first year, I'm really running with it, and I'm going with it, and it's going well. And my playing is just it's skyrocketing. My understanding of jazz vocabulary, mind you, no one else in my family plays music. There was an electric organ in my grandmother's house, and being the first of my of five kids, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents.
Yeah.
Just in a young mother situation, right? So I spent a lot of time there, and they just let me goof around on that thing.
Yeah.
But aside from that, there was no like real. And then nighttime lullabies. I put that in there too. And then my grandfather was very deeply interested in jazz music. So from his office, he smoked pipe, wore glasses, had a big beard, and listened to jazz music. So he was like a figure, like an image to me. That like all those things were like intrinsically linked. They weren't their own apart from that. And it wasn't until I was in the States and studying music that jazz became like its own thing, separate from like this image that I had of my grandfather.
Now, did you play guitar before you showed up, or you just that was what you picked whenever you went to college?
So I chose that plethora. I played some guitar in Denmark, but I would say this, like in Denmark, and I just recently tuned into this worship music conference called Sing in Nashville, Tennessee. And the speaker comes on, he tells a story which is deeply relatable. And he says that like in Europe, there's a culture for singing. Like whenever you go to your favorite sports game, you sing. Whenever you're at the bar, you sing. Like there's just like people sing.
Yeah.
And in America, what he's talked about was like people kind of jangle the change in their pockets, mumble along or whatever. Like they'll stand for the national anthem, but it's not common for people to sing necessarily, right? But there's like a cultural difference, and I say that as a preface to like, yes, I've been tossed guitar. I like smash my hands into guitar, and there's a thing in Denmark we call rundesang, which is round song. So you just kind of pass the guitar around, and everybody sings, and then you throw it around, and it's fairly common that everybody that I knew in like my common circle of friends was inclined to playing and singing and whatnot. But as far as like my playing, that didn't really take root until I came to the States.
Wow.
I was I had tried several different things, like, but not very successfully. I was somewhat voluntarily troubled as a youth, in that I spent a lot of time. You could buy alcohol very early in Denmark. Like legally, you can buy when you're 15, which means that a 15-year-old looks like a 13-year-old, looks like a 12-year-old. And I remember being able to buy cigarettes for my dad. Very very early. Like I was very young. I might have been 6 or 7. So that being said, like I had access to a lot of things, and I didn't have focus in any way, shape, or form in Denmark at any point in time. So I had a lot of kind of abusive behaviors. I would go. I loved the energy of music. And I would go to punk rock shows by myself, just to get in fights and stuff like that. No, it was all bad. It was all bad. It was like just a lot of raw power and energy. And I didn't really know where to put it and whatnot. But I deeply loved it. And I would also say this: my biological father, he would send mixtapes. So like I'm of a generation long enough ago to like where mixtapes was a thing. He would make mixtapes for me, and he would send me music. And I do remember that fondly, because it was kind of like a tether to my biological father, who I had limited interactions with. And then I also remember, I might have been somewhere between like 10 and 12, but in this very small podunk town in Denmark called Kølvrup, population maybe 2,000 people. Right. There were 8 people in my class in school, and there weren't several other classes. There was just us 8. And it would fluctuate. Sometimes we'd get one new student, so it'd be 9, right? But it was very, very small. And I remember Morton, I would go over to his house after school, and his dad had a record player, and he had Black Sabbath,
Oh,
He had
nice.
Metallica, like Ride the Lightning, and shoot, what else? Deep Purple. So I remember putting those on. Like he would put them on, and we would just sit around a record player, and then we would look into the window pane and like make faces to the music. Like that was it, man. And that was like we loved it. We had a great time. We didn't know what it was exactly. The words were relatively foreign to us, right? Like that, but because we knew English. Everybody knows English around the world, right? Especially in Western European countries. What we kind of knew what they were, but we weren't listening to words or meaning. We were listening to sound and power,
Right. Yeah.
like, and that visceral experience that it was to like put on a record player, hear that needle drop, and crank up, speakers, and like feel it, and then like just moving our bodies and our faces and like Beavis and Buttheading it up, so that's kind of like to paint the picture and like flesh it out. Like I had interactions with and experiences with music, but it was more like it was a romance and kind of an idea of energy and power and everything else. Yeah, and like I said, I'd go to hardcore shows and stuff like that. Sometimes with friends, sometimes by myself, and all my front teeth are chipped from mosh pits and like just
really
going bananas. I would routinely I'd either put my hair up in a mohawk and like get in with like the punk rockers and then punch them in the mouth, or I would shave my head and get in with like the skinheads and punch them in the mouth. I lived in what was considered the kind of a ghetto place on the outskirts of Aarhus, where they had a lot of Middle Eastern relocated people. And being the antagonistic idiot that I was in my teenage years, I shaved my head and I wore like a green military coat, just like really, really abrupt and jarring in that social circle, right? Really provoking a lot of fights and being very abusive with myself and my body and my environment.
Right.
So, so that representation of myself coming off the plane, coming into the United States was probably pretty accurate, actually, but not a good representation, right? But just but fairly truthful and accurate, right?
But obviously, you had it in you to be able to kind of, I won't say turn it around, but portray yourself differently, because going into college, I mean, I know how to study, I know how to do these things, and you apply yourself, and you're obviously doing very well.
I mean, retroactive analysis, I would say that God opened a door for me, and I knew enough to know that I needed to step through it. Like I knew that this was a matter of divine intervention, that I had a responsibility to do this. And the way that I saw it, was very much socially informed by like, my buddy doesn't get the opportunity to go do this. Let me go and do this, and I'll come back and tell you guys about it. That sort of thing,
Yeah, for sure.
Leave and have a story to tell, which I think very much, like fast forward into the military. That's the story. That's your podcast. Even that's leave, have a story to tell, come back and tell about it. You mentioned the Valhalla Project, and I kind of love and hate the romance and enamorment that goes along with like the Viking and Nordic culture that's going on, because I grew up with these sites that I would go out and I would see them in my youth. And I grew up with, the sagas and that storytelling and everything. And then it was just, I came to the States and it was quiet for a long time. And then it like sees this big resurgence, but it's very much romanticized and whatnot. But one thing that I do think about often as I'm kind of looking at my tether to my heritage and the whole music thing and the adventure and the travel is something that I love to be able to share this. In Denmark, there's a thing called the People's Songbook, right? And a play in any socialist movement is to bring people around, unify them around their national heritage, right? Hitler did that successfully in Germany. The socialist movement in Russia did that, and kind of center them around like, hey, this is our common national culture. And I would say not just nefariously, like genuinely, like, because we do that too. We were talking about like the keepers of tradition,
right?
Like it, but anyways, Denmark being ran by social democracy for a long time. There's this thing called the Danish folk songbook and I have one. I love it. I love and adore it. It's great. On the spine of it, it has this picture of a Viking man, and his shield is down by his feet, and he's not wearing a horned helmet. He's not. He doesn't have that, but he has a harp. Very similar to an image of David from the Bible, right?
Right.
He's got a harp, and at his feet there's a young boy child, right? And it says underneath, "Det var de danske skjaldesang," and what it means is it was the Danish, for lack of better, shield bearers that sang, right? Because in old Danish language, there wasn't necessarily an old term for Vikings, or maybe there was, but Viking was more like a term by the people that are being attacked by them, like, hey, there they are, the Vikings, right? And for the Danes, I guess the reason that they use that word is because you're a guy that can carry a shield, or you're not, right? And that's also where the word, the shield maiden thing came from too, is like, you're a guy or a gal that can carry a shield, or you're not, right? And if you're the person that can carry a shield, you're the guy that goes out, right? Whenever there's time, when it's time for adventure, and we're going to go out and plunder or trade, which they did a lot of too, and explore, or just like answer that call to adventure, really. When it's time to do that, you grab your shield and you go out and do it. The reason it was on the spine of the songbook is because it was those people that sang. When they went out on an adventure, they would be the ones to come back. Meanwhile, Joe the farmer had been plowing the fields or whatever else, and now they slaughter the fattest calf. They bring the plunder home, whatever it is. They throw it all on the table. They get ready for a big feast. Everyone wants to hear what the warrior came back to sing about.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
They want to hear however he tells the story, right? So this is a medium for telling a story, right? Music is a medium for telling a story. Poetry is a medium. Movies, whatever it is, right? There's so many mediums for telling a story. But they crowded around and wanted to hear what the shield bearer had to sing about, what he had, what his poetry was, what he had to talk about, what he had to say. Typically wrapped up in less of an orator type speech, but rather wrapped up in like poetry, because that's a beautiful way to say it, and also an easier way to process the emotion and the baggage and everything else that goes along with it, right? So I just, and this is very recent, because that spine has been that spine of that book has been staring at me from my bookshelf for all the years that I've been in the States, right? Is actually given to me by a good friend of mine, Casper, who until this year was the lead singer of a Danish metal band called Berserk.
Oh wow!
And I love him dearly, and those are the guys that I left behind. I love those guys. They're my brothers. Love those guys dearly. But that's been staring at me for all the years that I've been in the States, right? It was a parting gift from them. And it's only been very recently that as I'm reflecting on my own departure from the warrior cult that I'm a part of,
right?
And I'll jump forward a little bit. Being medically retired, I can't be a part of the whole gunman thing anymore, because I know that that's kind of a smooth transition for some too. Is that, you don't do this anymore. Now you go and do the advisor role, or still the forward line role, front line sort of thing. I can't do that due to a medical condition, so I have to do something else. And so I'm rationalizing, like, what is it that I'm doing with my life, and then finding this door of like, oh wow, this whole thing, it was there the whole time, right?
Yeah.
Like there the whole time, and it has been, for like over 1,000 years, a part of the Danish culture, that the guy that goes out on the adventures, the guy that comes back and sings a song about it.
Yeah.
And then you like look at, well, Nashville singer-songwriter scene, right? Those songs, not necessarily penned by the guys that went out and had the adventure, but they're told from the viewpoint of the guy that went out. Like there's so many songs about the soldier and whatever else, the Semper Fi songs and everything else. And they tell that story. That's what they're doing. And I just, it's still being fleshed out, right? But it was a uniquely aha moment in that this isn't new. Like I'm not reinventing anything at all. It's actually fairly common. It's been in practice for a millennia.
Yeah.
Of the guy that goes out, has the adventure, comes back, and relays his story through a palatable medium, right? Be it music, be it poetry, be it whatever it is, right?
Yeah. You know what I think is really, really unique, especially as you're telling the history and things like that of your culture. You talk about the guy that goes out, the warrior that goes out, has these adventures and stuff like that. That is 100% what what you've done. Like you left your culture, you're on an adventure, and you've been on an adventure for a really long time. And now as you're getting ready for the retired life and things like that, and figuring out you're now going to be that warrior that's going to tell those stories. I mean, it comes full circle. Really cool.
Yeah, yeah, and of course, I have to recognize that I'm doctoring my own press release, so
Yeah,
of course, like this whole this whole idea lives inside of the microcosm of my perception of reality and everything. But I as I'm exactly, it is coming full circle. And I think as we in kind of a post 9/11 world, and now post withdrawal from Afghanistan world, a lot of similarities and parallels, and a significant amount of differences too, but a lot of similarities to like the botched, I shouldn't say botched, but a lot of the distress is about Vietnam, right?
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of that, that I'm kind of like, I'm not the only guy that's searching for meaning and an idea and stuff like that. And again, like, it's to be sentimental. Music pulled me out of a bad way that, like, I enjoyed working with my hands in Denmark, but I wasn't on a good sustainable trajectory as far as like my personal life and lifestyle went. And ironically too, that's what made me join the Marine Corps and not pursue music full time. But music's been there throughout as like as backdrop, as something to just a really significant part in this whole thing. And then to come to find out that it's been the significant backdrop for wars throughout generations and throughout time. Like that's been really significant.
It's, I don't know, it's an incredible, in my mind, it's an incredible, I guess, foreshadowing type of thing, right?
Yeah. And it was there the whole time.
Yeah.
Super neat. But so in Texas in the first year, things were good. I didn't have a lot of friends, but I quickly became Ulrik, because that's my name.
Yeah.
Your new best friend from Denmark, because that's where I was from. And there's no competition, right? Like that's an easy win for me. There's no other Danes here. But it was very much an international music program at UNT. There's a lot of people from a lot of different places. So it wasn't unique in that regard, but I was unique in the regard that I could drink more than anybody else.
Yeah.
That's some strong genes as far as that goes. And within the first year, I had the most exponential growth in any aspect of my life ever, in like my musicianship and my friend circle and everything, and my collaborative approaches to things and everything. It just skyrocketed.
Right.
I met a great friend, Julia Adamy, whose gracious family, the Adamys, took me in for Christmas, New Year's of 2006, going into 2007. I went and spent that up in Nyack, New York.
Oh, nice.
And I got to see the ball drop in New York and whatnot. We were close enough to Times Square to be uncomfortable. We didn't actually go right in there, but that's to say that I made some deep friends there, that too many to mention. But Joel Cross is another good friend that's out. He's podcasting now or Instagram posting and whatnot. He's kind of a soul guide, mentor, spiritual mentor, and great following on that. Just a really, really beautiful person. And I met so many like just very genuine, very driven, creative people that have gone on to do great things in their musical exploits and pursuits.
Right.
And are very much like the people inside of the realm of music. I got to be there when Snarky Puppy was formed, or I think in the first year since Genesis. I met a lot of those people and like was just guffawing over them up on stage, but it was at such small venues that I could run up and like tell them and shake their hand in person and stuff, and just like Chris McQueen was in that band for a while, and Chris McQueen and I also played in a mariachi band.
Really? Nice.
And just like little things like so it was really, really big for me personally to be like so wholesale involved and see so much growth. It was just mind blowing. But I also had my vices and a deep tether to those things. And being first year in a full scale university environment, and being 21 when everybody else was 18, you can kind of see where that's going, right?
Yeah.
And being able to outdrink everybody, because I had cut my teeth on drinking in Denmark as a teen alcoholic, which, by the way, Denmark has been leading, and it's kind of a back and forth between Denmark and Iceland, sometimes Germany, sometimes the Czech Republic, but teen alcoholism rates, right?
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So I was definitely a part of that as a statistic, I would say. And so I this is the 2000s, and like there's all those college movies of like just insane college parties, and they were very much going on, like just people everywhere, keg stands, live music, bands inside of living rooms, everything that you could possibly imagine. The bands that were inside of living rooms were like just guys that would go on, like, are making a career, you know, touring around the world now and everything. It's like it was amazing music inside of living rooms, but nonetheless, a lot of drunken debauchery that I was very much part of. So those two things like were starting to like make a rift in my life. There was like the exponential growth side of it, and then there was the utter depravity of my vices that I brought with me, right? And they started to catch up with me physically, because I wasn't able to, like, my hands would hurt, and I'd spend 5 and 6 hours in a practice room, and when I wasn't in a practice room, I'd just be pounding Miles Davis and whatever else into my ears, because I didn't grow up with music.
Yeah,
all of my peers there had grown up. Maybe not all, but most of my peers there had grown up with music, and had like a strong connection with it from childhood, where I felt I was playing catch up a lot.
Yeah.
And so I had that one side of me that was like very much laser beam focused and just pounding it into my skull, and into my hands. And then I also had my vices that didn't allow me to recover properly. And, you know, while you're young, you can recover from anything, but even in my early 20s, it was starting to take a toll. And I remember voicing that as a complaint to my professor, Fred Hamilton. And he looked at me and said, well, you need to exercise, you know, go for a run. Like, we have a gym here, go use it. And sure enough, you know, as a college in Texas, they got a fantastic gym and a great football facility and everything else, right? So I start hitting the gym, and that naturally, organically starts to de-escalate my violent drinking, my violent substance abuse, and everything else. It's like starts to like come back down a little bit. Thank God. I meet a great friend there. He was a former Texas State wrestler, Adam Baker, had his retina detached during a match, and he, as a hobby photographer, that was a crushing blow to him. And so he, after that, reprioritized his whole focus. Still very much a tier 1 athlete, but switched his majors, went into photography. Does that now full time. Like that's what he does. Well, that, and I think he does some other side hustles and whatnot. But he's a successful man. Yeah, and a beautiful person. Just great guy. I met him in the gym because he was another like long-haired, burly rock and roll type. You know, just like devil may care type of guy. But he pounds heavier than me, and like so he was like ahead of me as far as like, and I was new enough to know that I'm going to find the guy that's doing it well and do what he's doing. That informed my jazz decisions right at San Jacinto. That informed my decision to go up to UNT. That really informed a lot of my decision. Like, find the guy that's doing it, and like, okay, there's nothing new under the sun, really. Like, so I'm just going to find the guy that's doing it well, and organically, because I'm a person unique to, I'm my own snowflake, right? But automatically it's going to have its own fingerprint from me. Right. I don't have to, coming out of the 90s, like the highest ethic is you have to be unique. You can't copy anybody else. It's got to be original. And that can kind of cut people down at the knees sometimes. And I very quickly abandoned that as an ethos. So anyways, I find Adam Baker in the gym. It's because you're kind of measuring biceps with the next guy and everything else, right? And and he becomes kind of my gym Sherpa. Helps me guide me through, because he grew up playing football and as a Texas State wrestler, like like you can be a all-state champ in any other state. You're an all-state champ in Texas, dude. You're the man. Like,
Texas is
bro
so much bigger than.
And also focused on athletics and specifically focused on for lack of better, violent athletics, right?
Yeah.
You know, also incidentally, one of the bigger recruiting pools for the Marine Corps,
Yeah.
right? So like there's some correlation in there. Not sure which. So anyways, he kind of became my gym Sherpa. And while I was in that gym, University of North Texas is a state college, state university. So the Hazelwood Act there, so far as I understand it, the Hazelwood Act there allows veterans to come in and study for free. And so you get to take your Hazelwood Act, you get to take your GI Bill, you get to take everything with you, and you're paid, you know, relatively well to go to school there. So I see a lot of veterans there, right? Mind you, this is between the time frame of 2006 and when I finished there and I enlisted into Marine Corps in 2010. I'm seeing a bunch of veterans there. I'm seeing guys with like Army and Navy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I'm still doing like the kind of look over my shoulder to see like who's doing what and can I do it better or can I do it similarly and how are they doing it?
Right.
And I find myself kind of, you know, rubbing elbows with guys wearing their USMC shirts or Army shirts or whatever else and kind of thinking to myself, one of my favorite T-shirts coming to America had the CCCP, right? Soyuz Sovietsky Socialistic Republic, right? I probably butchered that for any Russian speakers, but they're probably not any. Doesn't matter. Anyways, I wore that again because my tendency was to wear and dress provokingly to instigate fights. That was essentially it, right? So I'd go to punk rock shows, I'd dress like a skinhead, I find the skinheads, I'd beat the tar out of them. I go to punk rock shows, I'd dress like a punk rocker, I find the punk rockers, I'd beat the tar out of them. I came to Houston, Texas, I'm like, all right, well, I'll wear a communist shirt, you know, see who I can get in a fight with. I went to one hardcore show in the States, and I got in one mosh pit, and I got the ever-living tar blasted out of me. Because I was $150 soaking wet with a pot full of change coming to America. And there's not a single good old boy in like a hardcore show in Houston, Texas that's anything less than 200 pounds. They just mop the floors with my skinny self. So yeah, that was an awakening. But so I'm still like very much in that mindset of like, what are these guys doing? Can I do it better? But I never had like that inkling of I want to join coalition forces and fight terrorists across the world.
Right.
That was more so informed in part by spending time in the gym and seeing those people there, going to bars and finding the guys that, you know, as I'm in the bar spilling over the side about worldviews and stuff like that, invariably I would find myself, because there's so many veterans there too.
Oh yeah.
I'd find myself aligning, you know, like agreeing with dudes and then finding out afterwards, oh shoot, this guy was a Marine that served, you know, in Iraq or whatever else. Like I would be very much like, we would be saying the same things, like having common values, common ethos, like a very much like drive towards adventure, right? I see it, I take it, money where your mouth is, work ethic and stuff like that. Like a lot of things are like really parallel. And so I saw that. And the other thing was a growing debt of gratitude towards this nation that I could work as much as I wanted to. In Denmark, I mean, I was in like really low tax bracket. Everyone in Denmark pays a just as a base rate 25% sales tax on everything that you buy.
Oh wow!
Then there's additional tariffs on imports, you know, for I don't know, gas or whatever else, right? You know, to the point where like some vehicles are like 300% of the price or 400% of the price of what they're. It's really difficult to buy a vehicle. That's also why, you know, Denmark has a really good stat for public transportation bicycles.
Yeah.
Because you can't buy a car. It's also a very small country. There's a couple of other factors in there too, but so I had that, and in a lower income bracket, I was still paying 48% of my income in taxes, and coming to America, I wasn't paying that amount of tax. I wasn't taxed as heavily, and I could work much more freely as a free agent, as a musician, as a teacher. So I did a lot of that, and also I picked up a gig unloading trucks for Walmart because, again, like, you know, using my body, I liked that, and I really did enjoy that. I was an inventory control specialist for Walmart, unloading trucks. I loved it, and I outpaced everybody. And that was my thing, you know, like very, very competitive minded. I wanted to do that. I just wanted to move things with my body. And but yeah, so I had a growing sense of debt and gratitude to this country that had offered me so much. And I would say about Texas too, it's very much a love it or leave it kind of state. Like there's a strong national pride that Texans have for their state of Texas. And I identify deeply with that because there's a similar national pride for Denmark. Like we put the flag out for everything.
Yeah.
They did the same thing in Texas. The flag was out for everything. Barbecue, flags. Birthday, flags. 4th of July, you better believe flags, right? But they're all over the place.
Yeah.
And so like there's, I started to feel this sense of debt and gratitude. I was aligned with these guys that were military veterans. Some of them, pieces of them missing, things like that, right? My vices were definitely cutting me off at the knees. And they weren't doing me any favors. I spent, different amounts of time in holding cells and in jail and stuff like that.
Wow. Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about veteran stories before we started talking on your podcast. And I played with an Elvis impersonator. My good friend and roommate in college, Shay Henley, loved the guy to death. He got us hooked up with an Elvis impersonator gig. I forget the name of the guy, but he was way over the top, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
It's very much Elvis in Vegas, Coke days, right?
Okay.
Had the body for it too and everything like that. Not the fat body, but like the young, good looking Elvis and everything. And I remember vividly, we got a gig for the Big D Dallas Detachment of Marine Veterans. And shout out to those guys. We played that show with all the gyrating of the hips and everything else that you could imagine.
Yeah.
And the wives were good sports. They were like getting into the show and flirting with Elvis. And of course, we were catching the stink eye from the dudes, and getting promises of like, you're going to get your butt whooped after the show and stuff like that. Which, as a young, early 20s, scrawny guy that is used to being somewhat rambunctious, like was a little bit intriguing, but also a little bit like these guys might, this isn't the crowd, like the usual crowd that I fight with. They turned out to be just beautiful sweethearts, and invited us up to their hotel room afterwards, where they had an after party, Marine Corps style. They had opened the door between two hotel rooms. They'd filled the bathtub with ice.
Oh, yeah.
And it was chock full of beer and war stories, dude.
Mm-hmm.
War stories that just stood in a circle and told war stories. And myself and Shay Henley were invited to that after party with these vets out of Vietnam, out of Korea. And they were telling their stories, dude.
Oh, yeah.
And it was amazing. And one stood out in particular. I got to hear the personal testimony from a tunnel rat from Vietnam.
Yeah.
And for anybody listening to this podcast, they probably know what a tunnel rat out of Vietnam is. But tunnel rat was a dude that had a 5-minute life expectancy upon arrival to Vietnam. He was the dude that was with a flashlight in one hand and a 1911 in the other, was sent down face first to crawl knees and elbows through these tiny little tunnels filled with booby traps and Viet Cong. They're just there to murder you. And I talked to one of those dudes. That's what he did.
Yeah.
And he had a nervous tick. He would lick his shoulder in between like every 5th or 6th, 7th word. And he's just standing there with a beer telling stories about his first time going through and killing a guy in a tunnel in Vietnam with a flashlight in one hand and his 1911 in the other.
Wow.
And he described the ringing in his ears. He thought he had gone deaf because, closed space and everything. And the first time too, because after you shot guns for a long time, and being drafted out in Vietnam, man, they went quick.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
So there wasn't a lot of time to kind of get seasoned
to that.
Seasoned to firing your weapon. Because when you fired your weapon for some time, you know that it's going to happen. And there's this auditory exclusion thing that happens that that I'm going to fire my weapon. I know it's going to be loud. My ears close up. They open back up again. It's in part like a physiological preservation response, and it's an adrenaline response, and it happens organically. Anyways, this guy said that in these close quarters and the adrenaline dump and everything else, like he shot and he couldn't hear anything. He came out. He was yelling at people. He thought he was deaf.
Wow.
And he said that after that, he sharpened up his E-tool, his entrenching tool, the shovel that you can put at a 90-degree angle for, using it as a pickaxe. He sharpened up his E-tool, which is already a little bit sharp, right? He sharpened up his E-tool, and with an E-tool in one hand and K-bar in the other hand, he would go crawling through these tunnels in Vietnam. Whoa. And if they were on the one side, they would get the E-tool, and if they were on the other side, they'd get the K-bar. And that's how he continued to clear. Yeah, exactly. I made exactly those eyes. I made exactly those eyes at that story. I mean, I'm drunk. I'm having a good time. We're partying like this. It's a crazy experience, like a roller coaster of emotion. I'm with this Elvis guy. They're going to beat me up. No, they're cool. This guy tells a story afterwards. Like there's just a huge like hangover of processing after that. But anyways, like
it's insane,
completely insane. Yeah, like just mind-blowingly insane story from a veteran, right?
Yeah,
like just you've seen him too. So that was like that was a pivotal moment. I had already, because of aforementioned experiences and kind of alignments and shifts in mindset and seeing the writing on the wall,
right?
Like I'd started to mature into this idea of like I want to repay this debt of gratitude. I mentioned before too, like I very very conscientiously wanted to repay this debt of fate, of this door being open, and that's what prompted me to leave and enter the United States. I wanted to repay that debt that I'd kind of accrued to Texas and this great nation that had offered me so much opportunity, so much growth. And I was starting to think about armed services as an avenue for that. Again, you live long enough in Texas and you become a patriot, man. Like, it's almost
it gets ingrained into you at some point.
Yes, yeah. Big shout out to Texas for that. But yeah, that was a pivotal experience, and I knew like, okay, yeah, this has to happen. Like, I need to serve. I need to do this. Shay also earlier in our friendship, because again, like I was very provocative. Shay is a good old Southern boy. He's from Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. His mom plays in church. His mom and dad met and played music together. He grew up playing music. He's a phenomenal dude. He lives in Nashville, Tennessee now, and is a part of like the Nashville circuit. Does sound for big names. Goes out touring. Like he's just and played for until he developed like crippling tendonitis in his Achilles tendon. He was playing like 6 nights a week on Broadway in Nashville. Like that's what I mean. It's like these are the guys that I got to experience their genesis of at UNT. It's just awesome people. But he gave me this book to read. Dude, read this. And it was Inside Delta Force. And it's like one of the earliest guys that went to selection for Delta when it was first put together. Delta being a tier 1 special operations unit within the United States Army. When they were like first putting that whole idea together of having special operations unit for unconventional warfare, right? They had, U.S. has conventional lockdown since World War II. Like we dominate the seas, dominate the skies, we dominate every, ground warfare. Like we've got it covered. So that's why, you have the whole terror thing, and you have like the insurgencies and stuff like that, because like on the conventional scale, there really isn't, nobody can step up to the plate. So now adversarial actors are now in the unconventional realm. So anyways, that unit was put together, and this book was about one of the first guys to go to selection for that. I read that, was enamored by the idea, and I thought to myself, well, at this time, I'm in my mid-20s. I'm 24 going on 25. This is in 2009. And I'm thinking, well, I don't want to, I'm not a citizen at the time either, but I don't want to go in to try to become an officer. I want to do the work. I want to get dirty. I want to do the hands-on thing, because again, like that's what I did in Denmark. That's what I did unloading trucks for Walmart. I want to do the thing on the ground. But I also don't kind of want to be just like general masses within a conventional function, because I'm not 17 or 18. I've gone to college. I'm studying philosophy at this time. Like I'm an international dude. Like I don't think that I would fit in well there. And so I started looking at my options for special operations. And I'm not going to lie, the first place that I looked to was the Air Force, because who doesn't like 5-star hotels and surf and turf on Fridays and stuff like that?
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And you get to do mission too. And I was like, dude, that looks great. I would love to do that. So I go down to the recruiting office there in Denton, Texas, and he's not there. And I'm like, okay, all right. Well, it says, call, leave a message. I call, leave a message. I go down kind of intervallically, and I go down. Like he's just not there.
Yeah,
like he's just not there. And I eventually like, okay, this isn't working. I go down to the Air Force recruiting office somewhere down in like Fort Worth or Dallas or something like that. And I finally get a hold of an Air Force recruiter. What I'm getting at is like Air Force recruiters, I don't know what they're doing, but they're not in their office. Which again, I would love to work there. But anyways, I finally get a hold of one, and he's like, "Well, you're not a citizen, so you can't go to do the soft thing because we need TS clearances and everything like that." They're very, very, very organized and very like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. We're going to do it all the way, and we can't take you into this, but we can do TAC P, which is terminal air control. P, I can't remember what the P is for, but they essentially attach on to larger conventional Army units, and they control the air, right? It's a tactical air or terminal air control.
So like a forward air control type thing.
Exactly that. Yep. And again, it's attaching to kind of run of the mill Army unit, and then I'd be the outsider on the run of the mill Army unit, which like I don't know that I want to do that. So I go over to this is post Lone Survivor. I read Lone Survivor. This is post some of the tragedies that happened within the Navy SEAL community, and I knew that I didn't want to do the SEALs for various reasons. So I didn't go to the Navy recruiting office. I went over to the Army recruiting office because again, Delta Force and everything. And I thought, well, they've got two, right? They've got Army SF, Special Forces, and they've got Rangers, which is also utilized in a special forces or special operations capacity, unconventional capacity, if you will, and very much like a forward shock troop sort of thing. It's like, oh, cool, they get to fight. Still very much early 20s, young Ulrik ethos mindset. Like I want to fight. I go in there, and they're in the office. By the way, that office is packed, and I talk with everybody that I can. It's pretty much unanimous. No, you can go in generally, and then you can become a citizen within like the first couple of years. And then you can go to selection. Like, okay. Well, if I'm going to do like baseline anything, I'm going to do baseline Marine Corps, because even baseline Marine Corps is like, that's the hardest boot camp, right? That's the most senior boot camp. That's the most senior thing that you can do. Like the run of the mill Marine, even if he's not an infantry Marine, the run of the mill Marine still has seniority over any run of the mill, any other service. Like, okay, well, I'm going to go do that. And I don't mind what I do then. Like, I would like to do one of these recon contracts. And by the way, the Marine recruiting office is fully staffed too.
Of course they are.
100%.
They're fully staffed, telling people to go away, but just out of principle.
Yes, exactly. Well, I would say too, like there's something about the bravado that they presented too that very much resonated with me as well. But they're fully staffed. They're there to work, right? And they're there to get numbers, where the Air Force is not hurting for numbers,
right?
So I guess there's something there too. But being that it was a recruiting office in Texas, and being that I expressed interest for recon, they're like, well, we got all our recon contracts for the year. Like check back in next fiscal. And I'm already, approaching 25 at the time. Maybe I'm already 25 at the time. But I'm like in my mid 20s, and I'm like, well, shoot. Okay. I'm looking at it like, if I'm going to go in and then try and do this thing, I'm reasonably not doing the recon pipeline is pretty long. I'm reasonably not doing this until I'm 26 or 27.
Oh yeah.
Which is a little bit long in the tooth to do. It's a young man's game, right? It's hard. You can still do it when you're that age, but I don't have time to spare. I don't have another year to wait and holding. And also, by the way, my vices are catching up to me at this time. Like I'm still outpacing the devil here, but only barely. And so I'm like, well, shoot, do open. I don't care. We'll do whatever. Open contract me in. They found out that I play music over at UNT. Yeah. Right. So like, and right. The wheels are turning right away. It's like, okay, well, if you get a musician into Marine music program, like that's a big feather in your hat. Yeah. If you get an educated musician into the music program, ooh, that's a big feather in your hat. Yeah. So they're like, well, I think it's the recruiting station department head, Master Sergeant. I forget his name. He hosts a house party for Christmas. It's like, why don't you come over and play? I'll pay you. What's your fee? I'm like, all right, $200, $300.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll pay $300. Come over to my house party, play music there. His cousin shows up with a keyboard. We jam,
Yeah.
His cousin's vetting me.
Yeah.
And later, a guy, which a common friend, Trace Martinez,
Oh yeah.
comes into the recruiting station and hears me play, and it's all kind of a blur, but I'm like, yeah, man, like I'll play for you, and
But you're in a mindset of
open contract,
like, yeah,
yeah.
I'm open
I'm
contract.
just gonna
you
go
want
in
me to play, I'll play.
Yeah,
Whatever
I'll do whatever you want me to do.
Yeah.
And this guy's like, yeah, you're good, like really looking back on it, like no vetting needed, really. Like here's a senior year University of North Texas music student, like going into the Marine Corps, like, yeah, we're set. Like, what are we even talking about? So now it picks up. Now it goes fast, real fast. I play that Christmas get together at that Master Sergeant's house, and I go to boot camp in February.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's fast. And I still, like, my paperwork is all open contract, this, that, and the other. And you don't get your MOS until the end of boot camp. And they tell me my MOS at the end of boot camp. Boot camp is an experience in and of itself, right? But they tell me, I remember Staff Sergeant, or maybe he was Sergeant at the time, Silva, black dude, wiry, skinny, just fresh back from war in Afghanistan, like just strung out as you can be, and he's my kill hat too. Like he's the guy lighting the fires, making sure that everybody's freaking moving and like intense. And he's all of it, man. Like he's like he does the martial arts thing and whatnot. And he's like showing like how to throw elbows into like concrete walls, full force. And I'm like, dude, awesome. Yes. I love this. He's dropping like the people's elbow down on the concrete floor. Like this guy is just in it. Like he's showing like drop down into the prone. Pow! His whole body just slams into the ground, like complete reckless abandon.
Yeah.
A lot of things going on inside of that guy's mind, I'm sure, like there's a lot of stuff to unpack on that dude. But for me, like that guy was like watershed, man. Like that's whoa. He's the guy that reads me my MOS, and he's like, was it 55-24, right?
Yeah,
55-24.
Yeah.
He's like, like a very Full Metal Jacket moment, like, what the hell is that? What is this? And like, I don't know. Tell me, what is that? Like, oh, I thought you were gonna be a killer. Like, oh, I'm gonna play music. Cool. Yeah. All right. That's fine. I don't care. Because what I know from the recruiting office is that there's this thing called MARSOC, the Marine Special Operations Command, that has, in 2010, it's still relatively, or in 2009 at the time, right? It's still relatively new. And they tell me, look, dude, you can come in, you can do Marine Corps wherever we need you, and then you can go to selection after two years,
right?
Or actually, you can go to selection right away as soon as you make corporal, and then you can lat move over into it after 2 years,
right?
Because it's a billet. And I'm like, well, that sounds bad. That's great, because I get to Marine Corps, which is already like above every other GP, right? General population. And then I get to special operations after 2 years. This is fantastic. Yeah, let me in. Like, where do I sign? I go. And I'm fine with that. I'll go play music.
Yeah.
I go back. I guess boot camp is an experience in and of itself. And like my reflection on that would be that having known the wonders that a metronome could do for me as a player.
Yeah.
And proficiency, like doing things slow with a metronome, right? And then bumping it up to double time. Like you get to skip all of the intervals in between, because that fraction, like cutting things in half, is so organic to the mind and to processing, that you get to skip all the incremental little bump ups. So I had made a very frequent habit of just taking stuff and playing it at like 50 beats per minute or something like that, just like mind-numbingly slow, and really get the feel for it, mind-numbingly slow, and then 100 beats per minute, no problem, or 60 beats per minute, 120, which that's the range that most music is played in anyways. I'd made that a habit. Nobody wanted to hear the metronome idea in boot camp. It's like, we're doing drill. It's like, this would really improve.
This could help.
Yeah, like us synchronizing stuff, they didn't want to hear. Like, all right, whatever. So I did a lot of like prison workouts in between the racks. Like we would do dips in there.
Yeah,
Like I'd have, strap packs on there and whatnot. I got like a little kind of fight club gym going on in the barracks. That was fun. Um, and there's a lot more drill and a lot less kill than what I had anticipated.
Right. Yeah.
That kind of shocked me and surprised me. But I still like that experience in boot camp was transformative, like so Marine boot camp is kind of like the first chapter of any Navy SEAL book, it's like there I was, buds, hell week, and heard the ringing of the bell and all that stuff. And but it's because it is so impactful. It really is. Like that whole experience, very scripted, like the yellow footprints, the yelling, the screaming, the chaos and all this stuff. Very, very, very carefully crafted.
Yep.
Very
much so.
But expertly so too. And the scripts are so well done and robust that you can take any Marine, like whatever MOS, whatever combat experience, doesn't matter at all. You put them in there, you have them do the things, and it's believable. It passes. I was a little bit older than most. I had a physical edge on a lot of people, but not everybody. And I had a little bit of a hard time taking it as seriously as some others because I had. At that time, I've moved countries. I've pursued vastly different careers. Like I've got a little bit more breadth as a man going into it than a lot of my peers there, but not all of them. Once again, like there was definitely guys there that were a little bit long in the tooth as well.
Yeah.
But it was difficult for me, and I didn't have a lot of. Nobody immediately in my family stands out as like a military service member in that regard. Except for, I guess, my aunt and my uncle back in Denmark, because there's a mandatory conscript into the equivalency, I guess, of the National Guard in Denmark. And they did at a very young age. I remember this. They showed me how to disassemble and assemble the H&K G3, or I forget what they called it. There's like a different nomenclature for it, but it's the H&K 308 cartridge rifle. They had them at home. I was like, nice. Yeah, it was great because that's they didn't have, like, your National Guard has like storage depots and stuff like that all over the place. They just kept them at home, and that's kind of how they had them. So they showed me dis and ass on that. But aside from that, I didn't really have like a strong tether to the American military experience or any military experience.
Right.
So I didn't really know what to expect, and I just kind of went into it once again, like very much the one-way ticket to America. I'm not enrolled in college, but here I am. Pack up my truck, drive up to a new city. I just very much threw myself at it, and it was, again, like within a very short time range that I threw myself into the Marine Corps. So I had a hard time. It's a big culture shock being in boot camp.
Yeah,
I had a little bit of a difficult time for that, but overall, I got to learn a rifle formally for the first time, and that was really impactful. I got to shoot iron sights and everything. Gained great confidence on that, and made some lifelong friends that I still keep in touch with on Facebook. Passively keep in touch with, right? But that that sense of camaraderie and brotherhood was pretty impactful. It was pretty cool.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And then, graduated boot camp, got put in a holding. I went to Marine combat training out in SY West, Camp Pendleton, and graduated that. No sweat there. I got put in a holding pattern because this was in 2010, and there were some budgetary things going on, and there wasn't any money to send me out to Little Creek, Virginia, which is where the MOS, that's where the schoolhouse is for basic musician. And so I got held for 2 months in Camp Guard in SOI in 52 area, which times. Oh man, absolutely horrendous. But I got to meet. So it's terrible, and it's terrible in the regard that there's no real overhead, right? There's nobody really keeping track of what it is that you're doing. You're just in a holding pattern. You are sacks of flesh that are being utilized by some disgruntled out-processing sergeant and two corporals, sergeant of the guard, corporal of the guards, right? And these guys are completely out of their minds, right? They are too broken for repeat service. I love this experience. I don't know the guy because I didn't ever get to really know the guy, but is this, he must have been 6 foot tall, 200 pounds, looked like Hercules out of the Disney movie, sergeant of the guard that, oh man. So one time there was this big sleepy dude on front post inside of this little squad bay, right?
Yeah.
And he's leaning on it long enough, and we've got like a little QRF stack, right? He's leaning on it long enough. He's supposed to greet people or whatever, or call it, relay the alarm or what have you. He's going to go to MY school to be a cook. He's just very much like true to his character, true to his person. Big dude, a little husky, if you will.
Yeah.
And he's leaning over this post, which it's not quite. It's like a podium, right?
Yeah.
So a little podium, speaker podium thing. He's leaning over it, and he's falling asleep. He's falling asleep.
Yeah.
Sergeant of the guard comes in and just like the movie 300, Gerald Butler, Spartan kicks him and like lays this guy. I've never seen this before in my life. Like, and I've been to a lot of like shows, and I've seen a lot of crowd surfing. I've seen a lot of fights. I've never seen a guy kick a dude in the chest so hard that he went horizontally in the air.
Oh,
and
wow.
This is a big guy. This is a real human flesh big guy. He goes horizontal in the air, and he starts screaming at him, lighting him out before sleeping on post, this, that, and the other.
Yeah,
like wow, this is whoa, like anything goes. This guy's crazy. Another story from Camp Guard is there were the recon barracks are out there in 52 area as well, or they were. Before they moved over to Margarita. And, or actually, no, these are the recon barracks for the guys going through recon pipeline. I think that's what it is. Either or. Anyway, some recon bubbas are out there grilling and drinking beers. And we send out a roving patrol, with reflective vests and moonbeams and a walkie-talkie. And good radio etiquette is enforced on those walkie-talkies. So they're walking around in 52 area, and these drunk Marines, they start heckling them, right? Like throwing beer bottles at them, boot this, that, and the other, and, pogue and so on and so forth. And they call it in over the radio, and this sergeant of the guard is not having it, right? He's like, okay, it's on. He calls QRF, right? And mind you, QRF has full battle rattle, right? Like real flaks, real helmets, real M16s, right?
Yeah.
The musket, real M16s, real mags, real green tip, 5.56, and 12 dudes like muster up on him within 30-second drill, muster up on him, and this guy can run too, like again, just like the Disney movie Hercules, when that guy's running, like that same stride that he has, that's how this guy runs. Giant dude, just running, sprinting down there. He's there in like seconds, man.
Yeah.
Clears from the H that we're in, the figure that the building that we're in, the shape that it makes an H, moves from that H down to where they're at, puts them in a Polish ambush, right? Like in a circle formation around them, and like starts lifing these guys out. These recon dudes are like, whatever, man. Like, that's just like your opinion, man, or something like that. They're not having it. They don't care. They're drunk. And all feel like, I don't care. You got like your little posse of, boots, like who cares? This guy's PTSDing hard, right?
Yeah.
And he makes the call, go condition 1. Yes, exactly. That reaction, exactly. That's so authentic. I love it, dude. Like, that's exactly it. They're like, what? Like, shit just got real in SOI West, like what? No. And again, like these are a bunch of dudes that are fresh out of MCT, like no experience whatsoever. This guy that we've seen Spartan kick a dude across the deck, like is saying go condition 1, they go condition 1. So of course, and then not, like the recon dudes are like, oh, this guy is out of his mind.
He's
certifiable. Yeah, exactly. Like he's literally out processing because he can't go back to war, like he's a broken war machine. So they kind of wise up. All right, cool. Like that'll kill your buzz right away, right? Yeah. So like 12 dudes that have no idea what they're doing, like racking their bolts. Like, oh, okay, what's happening here? We're done. Paperwork, et cetera, whatever. Anyways, I do 2 months of that, like of this just like complete Lord of the Flies craziness. And I love every minute of it. I eventually become color guard, which you got to do, you got to hit it twice in a day, and then aside from that, like just don't miss it. Like if you miss it, oh, your life is hell, and you never get to go back to that sweet spot again. But I never missed it after that.
Yeah.
I got it. I got to do that for like the last couple weeks there. I want to say when I was on boot leave, I drove my car out there, and so I had my car. No, I didn't. No, I take that back. I'm sorry. I take that back. I rented cars while I was out there. But anyways, I would rent cars in between, like colors up in the morning, colors down in the evening. And then eventually I would train up another guy to do it. So I only did it every other day. Yeah. And I'd go down, I'd, have off time down in San Diego and stuff like that. So it wasn't bad. And then I made my way out to Virginia Beach. And went to MOS school after, 2 months of craziness there, which obviously I remember fondly. That was super fun.
So talking about, so you get to the School of Music, what was like the experience like? I mean, obviously well educated when it comes to playing guitar, stuff like that, but what was your experience like while you were there?
So in boot camp, the experience was that there was a curriculum, again, very well scripted, that was geared towards not me. Because I was a little bit older, a little bit stronger, a little bit more put together. I trained on my own. I had a regimen. It was geared towards somebody else. I had my vices and everything like that. I really did need structure. I felt like there was a similar experience going to the School of Music, that there was a curriculum and there was stuff to do, but it was geared towards somebody that was coming out of high school music. And needed some help. So I tested out of all of my curriculum in like the first short while that I was there. The only thing, I play guitar, and so I sight read. I don't.
Like most guitar players.
Exactly. I sight read like a guitar player. It's like, I could probably nail, these rhythms. The notes are going to be within the scale because I know what mode we're in. I know what scale we're in. Absolutely, I could shred. I don't know exactly. I can see it's going up and down. But I'm a little bit musically dyslexic. But I can read all your chord charts. I can read all your rhythms. No problem. I can nail the style, bossa nova, Latin, funk, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. I can do all that, and I've got a bunch of like Van Halen licks on tap. So like if we need to shred, like we can do that. So obviously, like the schoolhouse isn't exactly geared for me. Like the target audience is someone slightly different, which I understand that to be a little bit different now, especially like in a pandemic time. There's a lot of like really well-educated and prolific musicians that went in, who I had a chance to meet recently too. Like just really phenomenal musicians that come in, and they had a similar experience, and that they were well above and beyond what the schoolhouse was producing. So anyways, I introduced myself, and I let all the staff there know like what my trajectory and what my intentions were. Like this is what I'm doing now, and my intentions are to go and excel, promote quickly, and go to selection at my 2-year mark. I let them know that right out the gate, that was my intent, which was not popular.
Of course not.
No, of course not. They're like, hey, here's because like in the bigger picture, like they're looking at like we're filling a need. This is the MOS that we need. Like we're training that, we're providing that to the fleet forces, and you're telling me that you're going to leave the first chance that you get. Screw you, buddy. But in spite of that, I was able to graduate early. I didn't catch a lot of heat or anything like that. I participated in everything, and also I was very driven, like physically. Funny story. I ran into John Geary. Over at the band hall the other day. I was returning. I was trying to fix a pedal board for Charles Dunbar, who incidentally or occasionally plays guitar for the band. I was just delivering that back, and this guy, a warrant officer, comes by, and he's like, "Hey, do you remember me?" I'm like, "No, I don't at all." That happens because I was very, very focused. I had stuff to do. So I was the guide there when he checked in as a student. And he was like, "Yeah, man, you had his information, and when I checked in there, you came up to me and you were like, hey, so you like video games? Yeah. You like movies? You like TV? Okay. Yeah, you're not going to do any of that there. We're going to PT, and we're going to PT hard." And I was like, I don't remember that, but that sounds very much in line with what I would have said. That sounds very much like me. And then he also remembers that one time he's tall and skinny.
Yeah.
Right. He's got a runner's build. and he told me like that during one of the PT sessions, I guess I would slay people. I do remember doing something to that effect, but I was never really hazing people. I was just like, very intense on the PT.
Yeah.
And he beat me on one of the runs, and he remembers that. And after I saw him yesterday, and after he said that, I like trying to remember. I kind of remember there was a time where it's like it's coming back,
Yeah.
like it's way back there, but it's coming back because it was like in the indoor gym, and we were doing like some relay runs or something like that. And he beat me like just by a hair, and it really, it really got to me, or at least from like his perception, it really got to me. I don't remember at all.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
That's funny.
But I remember like my personal goal was I graduated early. They put me in charge of being like the barracks NCOIC as a Lance Corporal. And so I was in charge of the barracks for both the Navy, the Army, and the Marine Corps because they're all at that school. But I could put in charge because they didn't have anybody to put in charge of, barracks inspections, stuff like that. And they wanted to outsource that too, So I would just be the guy that did all the barracks inspections. And then the actual NCO that was put in charge of it would come out and verify with me. We'd do like a couple samples or whatever. But I gained enough trust and confidence to just run that.
Nice.
And the Dabblemars were out there too, and they took a liking to like that kind of hardcore PT regimen, also because I would slay the guys that would come in, and so that kind of took that off their plate because I was very much focused on like I need to be a physical specimen in order to go in because that's I just I want to take care of that. So yeah, I became close with the Dabblemars there, and they kind of hooked me up with some gym membership stuff out in town and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then I also assisted with the recruiting effort from a musician standpoint too, while I was there in Virginia Beach, and went out to a couple of high schools there and stuff like that. So that was kind of like overall my experience, but I was very much laser beam focused on like this is a necessary step. And I remember that the Navy department head was like, hey, you should come over and play for the Navy. Like you'll do music and like with your talent and everything like that, it'll be a better fit. You'll get to do more music stuff. Like you'll get to just play your guitar as opposed to, going over to the Marine Corps, you're going to do drill and ceremonies and stuff like that. And I told him, frankly, I don't, I was standing in parade rest, like just like Stonewall, like I don't care. I'm in the Marine Corps because I'm going to go to selection at my 2-year mark. Yeah. Like you have nothing that interests me. That was just, and that was true. That was 100% true. You have nothing at all to offer me because this is not what I'm going to do. This is there's a God-given talent and skill that like a lot of doors of opportunity have opened, and I've been able to capitalize on this. And I definitely want to use it to my advantage. And also I want to give it back as much as I can. Sure. Because it's awesome. But
at that point, it's a means to an end.
Yeah. 100%. And, it was somewhat unpopular, but it didn't stop me in the least. And I had a lot of other things that had so much forward momentum that it just didn't even matter that was my focus. Also, at the same time as I was at the School of Music, my darling wife, Aaliyah Moraz, as a young seaman there, was also going through the School of Music on the oboe. And I very vaguely remember we had no significant interactions. I think we studied in a couple of like music theory classes and stuff like that together, in like a group setting. And but she remembers, like me saying something to the effect of, "I'm just here to kill people," I'm not here for this. Like I know all of this music theory stuff and whatnot, like well above and beyond what we need to. My ear training is good and all that stuff because I went to UNT and like they really harp on that.
Yeah,
that was something that. Did you ever watch that movie Whiplash?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I've never seen it. I've seen enough of it though in clips on YouTube and stuff like that to know like, oh, it's essentially the UNT experience. Like the UNT experience is very, very like you're either going to be good enough or we're going to make your life hell. And it's not exactly, it's not as vicious or, it's just very much focused on quality, man. Like you've got to be really good at your craft. I don't care about your artistic expression until you've shown me that you can do the thing. And that ethos, one, aligned 100% with like the way that I viewed the world, but also two, carried forward into everything that I did since then. It's like, like you're like the fingerprint of like my own unique individuality that I was talking about earlier. Like that's going to shine through regardless of what it is that I do. So really what I'm beholden to is doing right by the craft, whatever the craft is that I'm doing. I should do right by that. And that tethers into like that keepers of tradition sort of thing, right? Like that I want to do right by this thing.
Yeah.
This thing is bigger than me. This country is bigger than me. This idea of art and music is bigger than me.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, answering the call to go and do special operations was bigger than me.
Yeah.
So I had an easier time than some, I guess. I had an easy time finding myself subservient to this calling and just a servant to whatever it was that I was trying to do. And that was very much harped on at UNT. So I had that skill set. I'm doing all this stuff. Like, yeah, I can arrange these big band charts or whatever. No problem. But I'm just here to kill people. Like I'm in the Marine Corps. I want to go fight. There's a war going on. I don't know if you've seen the news.
Yeah.
Like that was kind of like where my mind was at. But I meet my wife there. Or I met Aaliyah there. And she remembers meeting me. I remember meeting her or seeing her, and nothing else. Like no, because I'm focused. I'm laser beam focused. I'm going to do this thing. It's going to happen. There's a couple other like hardcore jazz cats there. We do play giant steps on like some off, like after hours banter and stuff like that. Because like I can't let it. I just can't. They had a Fender twin reverb there. It's just a powerhouse of an amp, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how old it was, but it was a real tube amp, right? It was super cool. I've never had one of those. And I got to play through it. And so I'd like go in there after hours at night and I'd be playing all kinds of stuff, jazz licks. And this guy, Charlie Arbelias, comes in and he's like, cool. Have you ever met Charlie?
I don't think so. Yeah.
He's a real square jaw, slick back hair, like just sax man, like just sax man through and through, straight and to the point, hard nosed, like just a lovely human being, but like very much like cutting room sort of bebop kind of guy.
Yeah.
He's like, cool. Opens up his case and like just starts hammering it. So like there was some of that stuff going on too. But that was I was very focused, and I say that about my wife is that I just love that we met in Virginia. Virginia is for lovers. I love that I met my wife there, and I just kind of stuck a pin in that. And we have the electronic medium of Facebook, and it's a great way, like I said before, to like passively stay in touch with people.
Yeah,
and so I did. I passively stayed in touch with her, and very, very minimal because again, laser beam focus. But there was something there that I knew I needed to pay attention to.
Yeah.
So I graduate there. I graduated early. It's a 6-month school, right? And I'm graduated by the 3-month mark. But there's no money to send me, and so that's when I'm like the barracks NCO. That's when I'm like just hazing myself. I go to the gym 3 times a day. I just going bananas, and so I graduate there, and then I check into my first unit, and lo and behold, there's Trace Martinez. He's like the enlisted conductor at the unit out of 1st Marine Division Band in Camp Pendleton, California, in 33 area Camp Margarita. And I check in there and I do the same thing. I tell him, hey, look, and Trace knows this because like he saw me out there and he knew like what my trajectory was. And I tell him and the band officer, I tell him the same thing, like, hey, I'm here to do work, and I'm gonna get all my ducks in a row. I'm gonna go to selection as soon as I can. And because of the way that selection is set up, like you can't deny a Marine the opportunity to go to selection. And so again, it was kind of like I'm just being honest, man. Like I'm just being honest in my command, but inadvertently it's kind of like a like
you almost shoot yourself in the foot.
I'm kind of poking him in the eye, like, hey, dude, so, but it is what it is, I check into that unit. I promote to corporal like the next day almost. And Trace pulls me and is like, what is this? He's like looking at my promotion papers because I get there's the junior enlisted rating, right? That informs your promotion eligibility. And it's informed by like, how did you shoot on the range? What's your PT scores like? And how were you rated in the conduct of your duties? And I've got a 5.5, which is like unheard of, but it's coming from the Dabble Mars. So it's it's good. These guys are like, they're hard nosed. Like they are known within the Banfield community to be no nonsense, real Marines, not cutting slack, not cutting corners, not, buddy hookups or anything like that. Like these are real and they're intense. Love them. So they know it's good. Like they're looking at that. It's like, what is this? Because it looks doctored, I check in, Lance Corporal. Yeah, exactly. And like within the first month, they're promoting me to corporal. Like, No, just, and I don't have anything to say, but I learned from my drill instructor, Silva, to like just answer motivated, sir. Like, okay, well, I don't know, motivated gunner sergeant. That's all I got. So I promote to corporal within like my first month of being at my first fleet unit, and so now I'm a full-fledged coconut, and this is so because of the delay at SOI West, and because of the delay at the schoolhouse, and also it being a long MOS school, we are now in April timeframe of 2011.
Okay.
So this puts me within the application time frame for ANS, assessment and selection for MARSOC. And so, like within the first short while of being at that unit, I've gone out to the trailers where the recruiting offices are for MARSOC, and I meet with Scott Day out there, and I have a sit down conversation with him, and he informs me, yeah, it's a billet, and you're already corporal, so that's good. Where's your citizenship status at? I'm like, okay, that's right, citizen, cool. So again, this is kind of the chorus of my life, right? Is that I just jump right in. So I put on my chucks. My service C uniform, right? I got my green pants on. I got my tan, khaki shirt on.
Yeah.
I got my little, my hat on, and I go down to the immigration's office down in San Diego without an appointment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just grab everything that I can, to look like I've got papers and everything. There's really nothing in there. I printed off an application form. I knew enough to do that, right? So I printed off an application form. I got the money because you've got to put your money where your mouth is. Yeah, exactly. And with that same kind of all right, adventure time mindset, I drive down there, and my natural charm, if you will, does not work on the some 300 pounds worth of security guard there at the immigration's office. It's just firmly planted in his seat, not going to get up for anything in the world, and it's just looking at me with a deadpan stare like I am dead. He's looking right through me. Like, no, you don't have an appointment. You're not going in. Like, what?
Yeah.
I go out and I take a lap around the block, and just kind of like, what am I going to do? Still my chucks, my service uniform, and as I'm walking around the block, I look down, and there's the some consulate or consular affairs office or something like that. It's got a bunch of flags outside, and there's a bunch of people coming out of the building. How fortuitous, right? So I kind of post up there in that intersection. I open up my folder as though I'm looking, and what I'm doing is I'm like taking a survey of like what's going on here. And this guy's coming down the street, a bunch of lanyards around his neck, right?
Yeah.
Badges and stuff like that, and just wearing business casual slacks and a shirt, and but he's walking with a purpose in my direction, which I'm coming from the immigration's office, and so I decided, you know what, I'm going to ask him for directions to the immigration's office, and I asked the guy for directions. He says, I'm actually heading there myself. We're here for the naturalization ceremony. It was just going because I'm wearing my uniform. He's looking at me like what's this guy doing here? And I said, no, I was looking to participate in one. Like, well, yeah, come with me. And he walks up, and we go up to that same familiar security guard. He looks at me again, but he looks at the other guy, and he's like, come on in, and waves him through. And he's like, well, he's with me. The guy with the lanyards, like, he's with me, takes me in. Like, I go past this, security guard, deadpan wall of you shall not pass, and we go upstairs together. Turns out this guy's the department head,
nice.
Like for immigration's office.
Yeah.
And he sees me in uniform, and he's like, this guy looks good. He sits me down at his desk, and he says, look, we've got a naturalization ceremony going on Veterans Day, November 11th, 2011, on the USS Midway. It's going to be a big to-do. There's going to be Congress members, current and former, admirals, and current and former. There's going to be a lot of people in the press there. You look good. Why don't you come out for that one?
Yeah.
Says, why don't I? Like,
sure,
do you have your application? Like, yep, here's my application. And your passport? Why don't I shredded it? Okay, cool. And let's see, who's the first president? And I'm like, It was Washington. I was like, all right, cool. So you passed the test. You look good in uniform. And I'm like, wait, that's because everybody's heard these stories about like what does it take to become a citizen, and I'm just here to say experiences may vary, right? That there is a formal process for things out there, but there's a waiver for everything. We know this in the military. There are ways around everything out there under the sun, and again, like I wouldn't accredit it entirely to my own personal ingenuity or anything like that, but this idea that a door was open and I just go. Again, that just played out like as though all I got to do is make myself subservient to the idea of forward momentum and that there's doors open out there and they got to be open for a reason. Like there's got to be a purpose out there. And so I become a U.S. citizen on the USS Midway on Veterans Day 2011. Big to do. In attendance is my college roommate, Shay Henley.
Okay.
He came out the night before, and we go out to karaoke bar and pretend that we are adopted brothers from Russia. And so we speak with an accent and do karaoke songs and whatnot. And we're just idiots. Almost don't make it to the ceremony because it's late night and karaoke bar and whatnot.
Yeah.
And the other guy in attendance is Aaron Collins, my jujitsu instructor.
Okay.
So he's a Gracie BJJ instructor down in I want to say Encinitas, California.
Okay. Yeah.
But legit, like just a real cool sweetheart of a dude. Maybe $160 soaking wet, pocket full of change, but he's like water, man. Like if you try to grab him, he's gonna overextend you and break your arm. If you try to pull in, he's gonna push that arm up and choke you with it. Like he's just an amazing, phenomenal BJJ, both instructor and fighter, and love the guy to death.
Yeah.
And those guys are down there for my naturalization ceremony. And then my first act as an American is we go to the Richard Walker Pancake House and I get bacon pancakes.
Nice.
Bacon inside the pancakes for breakfast. And that's my first act as an American is I sit down with my BJJ instructor and college roommate buddy and we have bacon pancakes. And that was a good time for me.
That's awesome.
That was I like that. I like to be able to say that too. That's my first act as an American.
That is awesome. Well, hey, let's take a break here, if you don't mind.
Yeah, brother. Yeah.
To all the listeners out there, if you're struggling, you need help, anything like that, don't forget the VA does have some great resources. You can always dial 988, press option 1. You can always text 838-255, or you can go to veteranscrisisline.net, click on that chat icon. Any of those are going to put you in contact with somebody that can help you out. Remember, one veteran life loss is one too many. I care about you. Ulrik cares about you. The whole veteran community cares about you. So please reach out for help. And if you're out there, you're not struggling, you don't need any help or anything, remember your buddies that you served with. Reach out to them. Ask them how they're doing. And if they need help, give them that helping hand. All right. Thanks, man. We're going to finish this up. But to all the listeners, stay motivated. Change your socks.